Good evening. Welcome to the last Downers Grove Village Council meeting of 2021. In keeping with best practice guidance from state and local health departments, we continue to ask those who are in village buildings, including this one, to wear a mask at all times. As is our custom, we'll begin the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Emily, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Barnett.
Here.
Commissioner Jose.
Here.
Commissioner Wallace.
Here.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit.
Here.
Commissioner Colaney.
Here.
Commissioner Gilmartin.
Here.
Commissioner Glover.
Here.
Welcome, everybody. Is there a motion concerning minutes of previous council meetings?
Mayor, I move that the council adopt the December 14th, 2021 minutes as presented.
Second.
Any comments, questions from council? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you. Just like that, we're on item 4 of our agenda. This is the public comments portion of our meeting. This is the portion of our meeting where we entertain public comments on items not on tonight's agenda. We'll have additional comment opportunities when we reach those agenda items. Before we continue, I have a few guidelines and reminders. Some of these you've heard before. Some of them are just important to be reminded of periodically. The public comments portion of these meetings, both on agenda items and non-agenda items, is an opportunity for the public to address the council. And while we try to be accommodating, it is not a question and answer session. We have a lot of opportunities to ask questions or engage council members, from e-remarks system to email to the CRC to our coffee with the council meetings that we have generally monthly. Or you can always go old school and call any of us at any time. But the public comments agenda item is an intentional part of a structured meeting. So please state your name for the record. Keep comments to 5 minutes or less. Please avoid repeating what others have said. Please keep your comments to one visit to the podium per subject. And please remember, it's an opportunity to be heard, not a debate or an open discussion. So with that, does anyone have any comments on subjects not on tonight's agenda?
One positive thing, one negative thing. Happy holidays to everybody. I missed y'all. Been a little busy. Hope you all have a safe and happy holiday. There's one thing that I want to make a comment, and I've been doing some mission work at the parking garage. I took a couple of people to the hospital that decided they wanted to change their life. And the other day I went through there and one of your race guys almost hit me. Racing a car. I called 911. By the time 911 was there, they were gone. Unbelievable, nice car. I just got a fairly new car, 2010 Honda Accord. I'm blessed. But man, if I wasn't good at driving, they would hit me with no problem. And they had a little, probably $30,000, $40,000 sports car. And the kids, and there were kids. They had to be maybe at the most 21, 22 years old. And then the weirdest part is, right after they almost hit me, a van, which don't quite understand why a van would want to race around parking garage. It was kind of funny, actually. I went around for a police officer. He's, and I just my suggestion. They had no problem racing past me 2-3 times. Put on Mark Carter, nail them, because they're gonna end up getting in an accident. These guys were unbelievable. They were going like 50, 60 miles out, and they came from the downstairs, turned this way, and I was going that way, and I went into the section where they normally park the cars, and they just pretended I wasn't even there. It's kind of sad because somebody's going to get hurt. So, y'all have a nice, safe holiday and a nice New Year's. Good night, everybody.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. I'm Marshall Schmidt, 4923 Sealy. I'm here to talk about the development of the Longfellow property. As many of you know, I live in that neighborhood. And several weeks ago at the village council meeting, or the coffee with the council meeting, there was a large group of people who wanted to talk about that topic, and the person presiding over the meeting was very clear that the council wanted to discuss the issue. He recognized the significance to the village and the importance of having a meaningful dialogue between the neighborhood and others who are interested in the development of the property and the council. Since then, unfortunately, the messages that we've been receiving is that the council really does not want to talk about the issue as a whole. Individual council members may engage, but as the mayor pointed out, this is not an open forum here. But given the significance of the issue, the complexity of the issue, and the kind of irrevocable nature of a development in the neighborhood, it's really important that the council find a way to engage in a meaningful dialogue as a group where the issues can be discussed. I do want to compliment the village. They've been very responsive to our FOIA requests, and it's been very helpful in understanding kind of where we are in the process, and we do appreciate that. The village lawyer and Mr. Fieldman have been very good about discussing some legal issues. We disagree, and those issues are going to be surfaced, and they should be, I think, discussed at the council level, because we do believe strongly that the interpretation of the zoning ordinance that this council passed several years ago is incorrect. And if the interpretation that is being implemented is implemented, it will basically render the changes that were made in the zoning ordinance meaningless, because it will mean that any open piece of property is not subject to the additional requirements that were designed to avoid overbuilding of the village. And several of you have heard my views on this before. Extensive development in the village is going to have the effect, and to an extent is already having the effect, but certainly the development at Longfellow will have the effect of fundamentally changing the character of the village. And my point tonight is merely to make clear that this body will be responsible for that. You will own whatever happens at Longfellow. And based on what we know is planned for the property, which we believe is inconsistent with the zoning ordinance, it will be a complete disaster for the neighborhood and for the village as a whole. And so it's extremely important that this council engage in a meaningful discussion. And so I invite you to schedule some type of hearing, some type of town hall meeting at which people can express their views on both the, how the zoning ordinance should be interpreted, and also just on the problems that are likely to be created and the concerns that the community has. So thank you very much, and I hope everyone has a wonderful holiday, but this won't be the last that you'll be seeing of me. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Marshall.
Good evening, Council. My comment is on three somewhat related subjects. I want to urge Council to re-examine its handling of electronic remarks, email, and discussions at coffees with Council and make them more publicly available. Electronic submissions are cheerily encouraged on the Council's current meeting listing of the agenda as an alternative to speaking at the meeting, but in fact, there's no such thing in the way they're handled. As you might guess, I endorse giving residents opportunity to submit electronic comments, but such submissions should be cited in the meeting itself so that they appear in the minutes. Preferably, either the mayor or village manager identify the author, and especially if a comment is not directed at a specific agenda item, the theme of the remarks should be stated. Only if given such standing are remarks accorded that place as a contribution in the meeting's discussion. Presently, they're not. Or they're retrievable by search engines, so if no one knows to look for them, they conveniently vanish from public discourse. Such treatment belies the mayor and village council's claim to hold transparency and more public participation high in council's modus operandi. For similar reasons, I believe media and emails and discussions at coffee should also be included in the public record. 2, the electronic remark I submitted for this meeting was intended to provide another more balanced and complete discussion on COVID and the pandemic than that provided by council, including the mayor's urging last week per public health department guidance to get jabbed. The evidence is obvious. Being jabbed does not, I repeat, not mean someone cannot get infected and cannot transmit the virus. Getting jabbed is justified if it is safe, primarily for those people who are at risk of severe illness and death, of which the U.S. has far too many. But it does not mean we should be jabbing everyone or that jabbing everyone is required in order to get past the pandemic. All jabbing does from a public policy standpoint is try to reduce the burden on hospitals. Is the jab safe? That depends on what one understands by safe, and those such as the mayor would likely be hard-pressed to explain what safe means in this case. As such, the claim is not unlike council statements asserting without proof council's meeting its goal of environmental sustainability, the Economic Development Corporation is the village's economic engine, or VC sales tax rebate deals are shrewd deals when their clawback provisions turn out to be toothless. I was pleased to see that in the last few days the message in the media has been to encourage testing, which it should have been from early on. If you're not testing the jab, and the U.S. has not been up till now, it's a complete misrepresentation to say the pandemic persists largely because people go unjabbed. Proof of being jabbed as a requirement for access to services is political overreach, when being jabbed is not the same as being negative to the virus. Likewise, if the set of individuals who are not jabbed is comprised of those not needing to get jabbed because they're younger and in good health, pushing for their getting jabbed is also overreach. The message for the holiday should be proven virus negative and be cautious in social settings, jabbed or not. Third, I concur with Marshall's comments. For me, selling Longfellow is the poster child of council's failure to understand and implement its purported goal of environmental sustainability. That failure is a double deficiency, as I've indicated to both council and the school district, Longfellow being perfectly placed to promote environmental sustainability, both in the way the property is refurbished, but more importantly, in repurposing it as an educational facility dedicated to teaching, study, and practice of sustainability within the village. Using it in that way, Downers Grove would become a true leader in both the county, the state, and beyond, if only you have the political courage. Because Village Council has an adequate definition of environmental sustainability and no metrics by which to measure environmental sustainability as the village's way of living, councils continue to promote development as if it is ever and always a good thing. That self and community deception is grounded in council's belief that the most important objective of council's work is not a village whose way of life is environmentally sustainable, but a village whose residents take pride in paying as little property tax as possible. What you should be doing is assess all proposed development against the goal of its contributing to the environmentally sustainable way of life. If you're not doing that, I ask again, if the village council is not responsible for that goal, who is? Thank you.
Thank you. Any others? Subjects not on tonight's agenda. Okay, a couple of things from the mayor's report standpoint, just to clarify. One of the challenges, of course, sitting up here is to keep things that are viewed in the public as clear as possible, and sometimes that requires clarification. So one thing that's important to understand about the Longfellow situation, well, there's a lot of things. We're not going to go through them here tonight, but perhaps tops of the list is that the village of Downers Grove does not own Longfellow. The village council, therefore, is clearly not selling Longfellow. So that just needs to be clear. It's a challenge to keep stuff said, clear. But I want to go back also to last week, because there's been some mischaracterization of my comments last week, and I think they're important because they are, in fact, public health issue that's in front of us all. You will not find this mayor, frankly, most mayors, doing anything that would suggest they were trying to be health experts. What you will find them doing is trying to be additional outlets for data and information and recommendations and best practices from the health department. So what I did last week was reported on a health department meeting that I attended that was held on behalf of the health department for all the mayors. And a couple of points there were not that jabs prevented disease. That was not what was said. What was said was that vaccinations seem to be the best defense against bad outcomes. In fact, 95% of the bad outcomes in DuPage County have been from unvaccinated individuals. But perhaps most importantly was this comment at the end, which I'll just read back. Please talk with your doctor. Please talk with your doctor. What I am saying and what the DuPage County Health Department is saying is that this epidemic is not over, that it is a serious issue, and that there are opportunities to mitigate the effects of it. There are opportunities to deal with therapies should you become infected. But most importantly is not to sit here at the village council meeting and think you're going to somehow be an expert on COVID, not to surf the internet at 2 o'clock in the morning and decide you know the answer to COVID. Speak with your doctor. And so that advice will come from me continuously through this thing. And it is very different than claiming to be an expert on COVID. So I hope that's clear for everybody. We'll move on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion concerning the consent agenda?
Mayor, was there anything else you wanted to cover under the mayor's report?
You know, I have a couple of things, but I'm going to touch on them at the end of the meeting.
The appointments?
Ha!
Except for that.
You know, it's a good thing we got two mayors. I got sidetracked by the nonsense, so...
Nice catch.
Yeah, so I do need a resolution. There is a resolution appointing members to boards and commissions, and I can't believe I almost forgot that. Thank you, Greg. We're going to not go through the process of reading this because it was posted, but I think we need to have a motion to approve that resolution.
Mayor, I move that the council adopt a resolution appointing and reappointing members to village boards and commissions as presented.
Second.
Any comments from the audience on this subject? Any comments or questions from the council? Rich, please.
Yeah, I'm excited about the list. I reviewed all of these candidates, had the pleasure of speaking with at least 7 of them. Some of them are actually here tonight. So I think the village is moving forward in an appropriate manner, getting good and balanced representation on these important boards and commissions. It's a volunteer effort. Sometimes the meetings go late into the evening. Sometimes they don't. But this council appreciates that.
Thank you, Rich.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to everyone who applied to be on a board or commission. It's what helps us keep this engine moving. And as a former member of one of the commissions, I've talked to many of you who applied, how rewarding it can be, and we just thank you all for your time, because we know that's oftentimes not always a lot of time for all of us. So really appreciate for everyone for volunteering, and look forward to more from those great boards and commissions. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? I'll second those conversations and thanks that have come out. And I'll remind everybody, too, that these boards and commissions serve a valuable role to our village. They increase the input that we have. They oftentimes increase the opportunity for public hearings on subject matter. They are an important part of our village governance. They're also an opportunity for people to be involved. Several members up here have been involved at other times. It's sort of a beginning inside peek into how we go about decision-making, and an opportunity to participate in that and add to that. So I'd encourage anybody who's watching to take a look at the village's website, the Boards and Commissions section. If you're interested at all, go ahead and apply. Get your name and your application in there. There are descriptions of how the boards operate and what their coverage is. It is no small thing to have this council deciding policy day in and day out, year after year. And it's really important that we have the input from the residents here tonight, the residents at all of our other opportunities, but also those boards and commissions. So those thank yous are sincerely felt by this council, and I'm sure everybody else that's served in past councils as well. I also want to thank my colleagues. This process has been a little bit tardy. Some of that is on us, some of that is on me, but nonetheless, everybody up here has helped in this process, and that's an important thing, too. We really treat these, as Commissioner Culvaney said, as an opportunity to try and get a cross-section of our community involved, and I appreciate the help, so thank you to everybody up here as well. Emily, would you call the roll?
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Commissioner Glover?
Aye.
Commissioner Gilmartin?
Aye.
Commissioner Kovani?
Aye.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit?
Aye.
Mayor Barnett?
Aye. Thank you all. Again, we appreciate the help. Now I'll move on, Commissioner Jose. Is there a motion concerning the consent agenda?
Mayor, I move that the council adopt the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Item 7 on our agenda tonight is our active agenda. This is the portion of the meeting where we plan to take action on subjects previously discussed. These subjects have been discussed at least once before, sometimes many times, and our intention tonight is to take formal action on them. We have several items on our active agenda tonight. Is there an ordinance concerning amending water rates?
Mayor, I move that the council adopt an ordinance amending the rates charged for water as presented.
Second.
Any questions or comments from the audience on amended water rates? Council questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Is there an ordinance concerning stormwater utility rates?
Mayor, I move that the council adopt an ordinance amending the 2022 stormwater utility rate as presented.
Second.
Comments or questions from the audience on stormwater utility rates? Questions from the council? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That too passes unanimously. Is there a motion concerning the EDC?
Mayor, I move that the council authorize the annual 2022 funding to the Downers Grove Economic Development Corporation in the amount of $430,000.
Second.
Audience questions or comments on EDC funding? Council questions or comments on EDC funding? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That too passes unanimously. Is there a motion concerning funding of Downtown Management Corporation?
Mayor, I move that the council authorize annual 2022 funding to the Downtown Management Organization in the amount of $400,000.
Second.
Audience questions or comments on downtown management funding? Council comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That also passes unanimously. Is there a resolution concerning OPEB?
Mayor, I move that the council adopt a resolution adopting amendments to the Other Post-Employment Benefits Trust Investment Policy as presented.
Second.
The audience or questions on this subject? Council comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That too passes unanimously. Is there a resolution concerning cash management and investment policy?
Mayor, I move that the council adopt a resolution amending the village council cash management and investment policy as presented.
Second.
Audience questions or comments on cash management and investment policy? Council comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Is there a resolution concerning purchasing provisions?
Mayor, I move that the council adopt a resolution amending certain purchasing provisions as official village policy as presented.
Second.
Audience questions or comments on revisions to purchasing provisions? Council comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That too passes unanimously. That probably seemed a little ridiculous for those watching at home, but some of those procedural things are necessary. I'll remind everybody that our process here is often kind of referred to as almost ongoing. We plan throughout the fall, late summer and fall, then we spend quite a bit of time budgeting, and then we levy. What you heard tonight were motions necessary to begin to enact that budget and begin to actually execute on it. So It was subjects that had been talked about not only last week, but in pieces throughout probably the last 3 or so months. So if you're watching at home wondering why nobody had anything to say about spending $1 million funding other organizations and changing our purchasing policy, there's a lot that's been discussed already. So thank you all for that. Item 8 on our agenda is our first reading. We do not have any first reading items tonight. If you're watching at home for the first time, this would be the portion of the meeting where we continued discussions or brought up new issues we were not planning on acting on tonight, but we have nothing on our list, which takes us to the manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. We do have a presentation and monthly report on the intersection of Forest and Prairie and a related item. I will be making a few introductory remarks and then handing it over to our Public Works Director, Andy Sikich. As I said, this is the Prairie and Forest Monthly Update. There are 2 objectives that the Village Council has directed staff to work on. Objective 1 is to take efforts to reduce the frequency and severity of vehicle collisions and crashes at the intersection of Prairie and Forest. We've been working on this as a council and staff and community team for quite some time now. As you know, temporary measures are in place, and we're doing monthly reports, which is what we're doing here tonight. Objective number 2 was directed by the council just a few meetings ago. It's an initiative to reduce speeds on Forest from Prairie to Franklin. So council has directed this work. We are actually taking this work to the Transportation and Parking Commission, or TAP, this upcoming January 2022, where they will give us their consideration and recommendations on ways to reduce speeds on that street. And then we will come with their recommendations and staff recommendations to this very council, planned for February of 2022. So with that as a background, I'm going to hand it over to Andy Sikich, our Public Works Director.
Thank you, Dave. Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is our 3rd monthly update regarding the temporary control measures at the intersection of Prairie and Forest, which is located just west of the traffic signal at Main and Prairie. As it was last month, the first part of this presentation is pretty much information you've seen many times before, so unless anybody wants me to cover that again, I will once again skip ahead to this month's summary. Okay, so in November, the Village Council approved pedestrian crossings at 2 additional intersections on the west end of Prairie, Stonewall and Woodward, and these were installed shortly thereafter. Follow-up traffic counts around the intersection at Prairie and Forest were taken in November and again in December. And this slide has been updated to show the improvements that are currently in place. Again, 3 permanent all-way stops at Lee, Oakwood, and Saratoga, a marked pedestrian crossings at Sealy, Stonewall, and Woodward, and then, of course, the temporary improvements that have been in place at Forest. Staff took additional traffic counts in December, and here are the key takeaways. The traffic volume on Prairie held steady in December and continues to be right around 77% of its pre-improvement level. Speeds on Prairie remain significantly lower than they were before the improvements. There have continued to be no reported crashes since before the temporary improvements were installed, and no reported backups onto Main Street. And the traffic volumes and speeds on the surrounding streets have principally returned to pre-improvement levels. As we know, Prairie Avenue has typically carried between about 5,400 and 6,600 vehicles per day. In the most recent counts, which were taken in December, the traffic on this section of Prairie remains at about 4,600 vehicles per day, which is a reduction of 23% from the September levels and is consistent with what we saw in November. Also, this slide has been updated for the December speeds. You can see here that the speeds on this section of Prairie have been reduced dramatically, which is also very consistent with what we saw in November. As we also know, Forest between Franklin and Prairie has historically carried between 1,600 and 2,300 cars per day. And in the December counts, traffic volumes on Forest were between 1,400 and 1,500 vehicles per day, which is slightly higher than the counts in November and slightly under the pre-improvement counts taken in September. I'll just hit these real quick again. Traffic volume on Prairie held steady at about 77% of pre-improvement levels. Speeds remain significantly lower on Prairie than before the improvements. There have continued to be no reported crashes or backups. and traffic volumes and speeds on the surrounding streets have pretty much returned to pre-improvement levels. And with that, I will open it up to any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Andy. Any comments or questions from the council on this update? Greg?
Thank you, Mayor. No questions, but plenty of comments. I think the implementation of the new stop signs on Prairie has had a significantly positive effect. We're seeing traffic volumes reduced. We're seeing significantly reduced speeds on Prairie. I think all of this is a great positive. And the fact that Forest still has more traffic than your typical residential street, but Forest is also not your typical residential street. And it's carrying a volume of cars that is now, right now, topping out at what is historically the low end of its traffic volume, which I think is also positive. The reason that we started talking about this in the first place, probably about a year ago, was crashes at the intersection. Thankfully, we haven't had any. And folks seem to be respecting the four-way stop, given they tend to respect other four-way stops. I don't think that should come as a galloping shock, but there it is. I think this is all incredibly positive. I'd like to see us make this four-way stop permanent. And I look forward to hearing from TAP and what they have to say about speeds on Forest, because I think that's the next big issue to tackle. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Greg. Anyone else? Rich?
Any surprises for you in this month's report?
No.
Okay. I'm also very pleased with the results on Prairie. Hopefully we can get similar results on reducing the speed, because that is people breaking the law. I would also like us to focus on seeing if we can lighten that traffic even a little bit more. I do feel this is a residential street. I recognize that it does cross the railroad, but my strong preference is still to have people turn east on Franklin from Forest and then head on Main Street. That might involve a pork chop there, or right turn in, right turn out. And the other consideration there would most likely have to be some synchronization of the stoplight on Franklin and Main Street. I kind of check my stopwatch every time I go through that, and sometimes it's 3 seconds, it's just a breeze, and sometimes it's 30 seconds, which seems like forever. So it's not me I'm worried about, it's the other people who are getting up to very high speeds that maybe can find a better route to Main Street.
Thanks, Rich. Chris?
Yeah, I agree with my commissioners have already spoken. I appreciate the fact that the four-way stops have had a great impact on speeds on Prairie, and certainly no accidents is good news. I still maintain some concern about the speeds on Forest, as I think we all do. I think one of the things, as we looked at some of the data that was provided, and is it has one of the highest speeds in those areas, but it's also an extremely short block. And so when we look at some of the other streets that have similar speeds, there's a percentage of difference in length that seems very concerning. And we've heard from residents about cars gunning it down that street. It's 500 feet long as opposed to some of the other streets. So we talked about commissions and how important they can be. I'm excited in a way that we're going back to TAP to look for some more suggestions on how we can do that. I think it's important that we try to take a look at those factors as well, and not look at all the streets as the same, but ways that we can evaluate those short distances. And secondly, I think whatever decisions that or perhaps recommendations that we get from TAP, I would encourage it to be something that we can look at as a system, a way we can apply to other streets as well, because I don't think these are the only challenges that we'll face. But I am encouraged by what we see here with the four-way stop. Just the volume does still concern me. Yes, it's lower than it was, but it seems to be creeping back up based on these dates, and we'll see next month what it looks like. Volumes plus the speeds are still something I think we still have to fix. Thank you.
Leslie, please.
I have nothing, of extreme value to add, but I do also just want to, make a remark on record as well that I'm also concerned with the volumes and the speeds on Forest. I'm thrilled to see the speeds on Prairie drop significantly. I mean, this is pretty excellent data and better than I think I could have anticipated, but I am in agreement with Commissioners Colavini and Gilmartin that I'm really interested to hear what happens at TAP and really want to start to dig into how we drop some of those speeds on Forest and potentially some volume as well.
Thank you. Nicole?
Thank you, Mayor. I don't want to create too much redundancy, but I tend to agree with everything my colleagues have stated up here. It's interesting to think about how this topic really started with reducing the frequency and severity of crashes at Prairie and Forest. And that's originally why we started looking at this. And through that, it's kind of morphed into this completely different issue of reducing speeds on Forest from Prairie to Franklin. So I think it's been interesting to see where we started and where we're headed with this. I tend to agree with Commissioner Jose in making that four-way stop permanent. And then I don't want to speculate what I think may or may not work. I'm excited to hear what TAP comes back with. And clearly this is something that residents are still concerned with. And I hope that they understand that it is something that we are still concerned with. And that we've proven that we're still concerned with it based on where we started and where we are today. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Rich?
Yeah, two more new comments. I happen to be in favor of speed humps. I work on 75th Street, so I go down Claremont every day, and it has a speed hump, and it has a wonderful impact of keeping me under the speed limit, because if you hit it at the speed limit, you're okay. If you hit it significantly over at this speed limit, it's going to change your day and perhaps parts in your car. I don't seem to be getting much traction with that argument, pun partially intended. The other thing I'd like to explain is that we have boards and commissions for a reason. They're allowed to spend perhaps an entire evening utilizing their expertise and their experience in other situations like this, where they can discuss one topic. The problem we do have with traffic control is, I've mentioned before, it's like a water balloon. You squeeze it here, it pops out there. You squeeze that one here, it pops out somewhere else. The other thing that Commissioner Gilmartin alluded to is that we do have the opportunity of this setting a precedent where other streets will say, well, if you did that for Forest, you need to do it for me. Why are those people so special? So I know that was 4 comments, but some of them just popped into my head. Thank you, Mayor.
Anyone else in the council? Any audience comments or questions on this? Okay. I'll just add, Commissioner Gilmartin's point is one that gets my attention the most. Being an old person sitting up here, and Commissioner Jose is also old, in case anybody's keeping track. But this problem has been one that we've struggled with. I think it's a normal thing for residents to feel dissatisfied with traffic in their neighborhood. That can mean a lot of things. That can mean their kid can't cross the street. It can mean people are driving too fast, any number of things. But so, if this additional review and study of Forest and additional consideration gives us the opportunity to come across some possible solutions that can be implemented here or elsewhere, that would be a great thing. I'm anxious to see what comes of that. And then we'll take it up here and see if it makes sense. But I've told people for many years, every year that people talk to me, they talk about 2 things. They talk about stormwater and they talk about traffic. It is a never-ending struggle in this town to work on those 2 things. So I'm glad we're continuing the conversation on this. Hopefully we'll learn a little something. I think I kind of heard everybody's is feeling like the stop sign was a good thing and we ought to plan on moving on with that. So maybe in January we could plan on making that permanent. And then we'll anxious to see what comes on the speed considerations. Thanks, Andy.
Thank you.
Sending my report with a big thank you to everybody on the village staff who worked so hard this year to deliver the results that we've all enjoyed.
A big thank you to the village council for your role in great policy making. Happy holidays from the manager. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Is there an attorney report?
There is no attorney's report. Sorry, Mayor.
Oh, I'm so disappointed, Enzo. Item 11 on our agenda tonight are council member reports. This is an opportunity for council members to report out on goings-on in the community, other organizations or government entities they're connected with. We'll I'll look left and start on my right. Rich.
Thank you. I knew you were going to do that. First of all, in my role in the Historical Society, I'm pleased to announce that the Historical Society has, in conjunction with the Park District, has had 16 new homes that have been recognized and will be plaqued for our historic home program. So that's a wonderful program, and it's a way to, doesn't physically protect the home, but our organization helps homeowners research the history of their home back to the whole chain of ownership, back to the original owner. And as we find out interesting facts about various owners, we put that in the report, and then it becomes part of the museum's permanent record. I'd also like to take this opportunity, because it's the last meeting of the year, to thank staff for all your hard work, and the department heads, and our village attorney, and Mike Baker, the assistant village manager. And this is a tough job they do, and they do it professionally. And we get a reasonable number of complaints on social media about Downers Grove, but you look at the things that we're able to accomplish, like the awards. I'm sure I'm not going to get them all, but we have the ISO Class 1 for our fire department. We have the Kalia Gold standard, which puts our police department in the top half of 1% in the country. We've been a Tree City awarded some 37 years in a row. I think there's only 16 other communities in the state that share that recognition. We get budget awards every single year on the process and our financial responsibility. I'm sure there's things that for Public Works that I can't name right now. We also have a Green Fleet so the part that we had most control of. We were rated number 50 out of 38,000 in the country for our Green Fleet, and that will just continue to get better. So thank you, staff. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your hard work. You make it look easy. You run the village well, and we're proud of you. And for my colleagues, I'd like to offer a point. It's a privilege for me to serve with you. This organization doesn't all agree. We don't always vote the same way, and we may vehemently disagree on issues, but I'm really appreciative of the fact that we isolated around that issue. Our feelings may be a little bit hurt, but then we move on to other things. We don't hold it against that individual. We don't automatically vote in a block, and that's pretty rare in suburbs. And typically municipal government is known to be very heated and very contentious, and this organization works really hard to not get into those kind of quibbles, and I think it serves Downers Grove. So pleased to serve with you all. Wish you a most wonderful holiday.
Thank you, Rich. Leslie?
Yeah, I want to echo the thanks to staff, of course. It's been a challenging but surprisingly successful year. And I also am incredibly grateful for the health of everyone up here and in our organization. We were not at the same place last year, and I'm glad that we're all up here and kicking. I do also want to mention that in this holiday season, I want to encourage kindness and empathy. I volunteer for an LGBTQ youth organization who meets here in Downers Grove, and some may be aware that their Santa event, which was meant to bring joy and representation to marginalized groups, was threatened with violence. And their church, including the church and their staff, their volunteers, and they had to quietly move the location of the event. I just want to give a shout out to Pastor Andy at First United Methodist for changing that event on a dime. They put on an excellent event, and I brought my daughter, and it was full of joy for the season. And also thanks, I know that at one point our police department kind of took a couple of the calls, and I just think they do an excellent job of ensuring everyone's safety. And also thanks to the public library for always being a kind advocate to a lot of the groups who are often marginalized. So my plea for this holiday season is let's just work a little harder to understand those who are different from us this year. And I hope that everyone out there has a joyful and safe and healthy holiday season.
Thank you, Leslie. Nicole?
Thank you, Mayor. Grateful to serve up here with all of you. Grateful to have you, Commissioner Colavani. I mean, as Commissioner Sadowski, if you get mentioned, last year was very different. So very lucky, very blessed to have you with us. As an educator, I've been incredibly hyper aware of the environment that we are currently living in. And Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit took the words right out of my mouth. Please be kind. When you're not kind to people, that's when we get angry individuals. That's when we get people that want to do things that are unpleasant. Kindness is the best thing that you can do, particularly around this time of year. And showing people empathy. There is a lot, this is a lot of heavy things still. There's a lot of heaviness still happening in our country. And I just really encourage people to take the time to consider other people, watch out for each other, and help each other during this season. Happy holidays, Happy New Year to my colleagues, to staff. Thank you so much for all you do. And to our residents, we appreciate you as well. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Nicole. Danny?
I just also want to thank staff for everything that they do, being one of the new guys up here, and also my colleagues for guiding me along the way. And it's been an awesome experience, and I look forward to continuing in 2022. And wish everybody a happy holiday and stay safe.
Thanks, Danny. Chris?
Thanks. I just want to wish all of our staff and their families, my fellow commissioners and families, just the happiest and healthiest holidays. Thank you all for everything that you do, and your families for their support, for your tireless work that definitely goes beyond 9 to 5. Like many of you, I'm sure the end of the year is often a time for reflection and thanksgiving for what this year has brought. So I tend to look for gifts in each year and what they've given me, and serving on this council alongside of all of you and with all of you has been a gift of learning from each of you, and I truly, truly appreciate that. It's a welcome gift. Finally, I want to extend my best wishes and happy holidays to all the residents of Downers Grove. We continue to be going through uncertain times. I think each of us are dealing with personal and community challenges we face on a regular basis. And I know that the pandemic has been a constant undercurrent that pulls us in many different directions. But for my short time in this seat, I've seen some of the best of what this community can do together. I've watched many of my neighbors find ways to help fellow neighbors in the most generous of ways. That is a gift that I know will keep on giving. So I just ask, as we round out this year, we as residents of this great village continue to support each other with the gifts that we have for each other during these times. We've heard the word kindness. Let's continue to extend more kindness, extend a little more patience and tolerance and understanding. It's what we do best as a community. So just happy holidays to everyone and Happy New Year. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Greg?
Thank you, Mayor. I think saying that 2020 was a challenge is an understatement, to say the least. As we finished last year, I talked about hope, the hope of the year to come. And while we faced many challenges this year, I think we have done a good job of delivering on that hope. That we have faced many challenges this year, and yet once again passed a balanced budget. Once again seen our fire department, as Commissioner Colavani referenced, being confirmed as ISO Class 1. Our police department is CLIA Gold. Now that you hear these designations, what does that mean? It means when you dial 911, you've got some of the best in the country. They're in the top 1% responding when you need help. And it also has an effect on your homeowner's insurance, the ISO Class 1 with the fire department, because folks know exactly what kind of response that means. We're finally taking steps on the problems that we've had for more than a decade in facilities, and finally solving those problems. This has been a year of, of hope, and much of it fulfilled. And I take tremendous joy and pride in that, and I think we all should. So many thanks to all of my colleagues up here, to staff to be sure. Not only do you make it look easy, but you help make us look good, and we really appreciate it. We've got the best in the business sitting over here, and that goes from the top down. Nobody does it better than Downers Grove. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Greg. I'm going to repeat a little bit, it's because the sentiment, I think the truth of the matter is we all share it. And that is pretty neat, too. It is, as Rich said, not always the case across governance, but it's certainly been the case here, and I thank everybody for that. As we wrap up 21 and prepare for 22, we do have an opportunity to pause and reflect. It's a time of year when friends and family connect and reconnect over shared good wishes, a time when we consider the year's challenges and successes, take a minute to remember that each other, our friends, neighbors, and shared interactions are what really matter most. 2020 and 2021, the COVID epidemic and its occurrence during an election cycle has raised the stress in all of us across the country. Uncertainty breeds fear, and there's been more than enough uncertainty to go around. But every community, from family to neighbors to clubs to churches to teams to the village we all call home, will always be charged and challenged with managing the frailties that come with being human. The fear and skepticism from not knowing can be replaced by excitement and optimism, though, if we choose. If we choose to engage each other, learn to know each other, really understand each other, we'll find room for each other. Indeed, it's a job of each of us to choose better, to choose kindness, to choose love. Let's take every issue that comes before us and see it as an opportunity to learn, opportunities to create tomorrows for our community that are better than our yesterdays. During Christmas, some of us celebrate the birth of Christ, whose message is one of love. No matter your creed or conscience, love matters most. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love is the only force capable of transforming an enemy into a friend. Love never claims, it ever gives. Some of those you may recognize. When we love each other, we put aside the things that are different or annoy or aggravate and highlight those things which make us alike. No one ever argued or shamed or yelled someone into being a true neighbor, a partner, an ally, or a friend. A couple of years ago, during this same time, I reflected on how former President Obama reminded us that the message of Christmas extends beyond those who celebrate their faith during the season. It reminds us to treat one another the way we want to be treated. That in Christmas, a message of unity and decency and hope abounds. Our village is made up of good people from many backgrounds with many beliefs. We all share a love of our community. I'm certain of that. To succeed in making tomorrow better than yesterday, we need to take that love of community and let it manifest itself into love for one another. I share in the hope that New Year fills us with understanding, forgiveness, and the space necessary to remember that even with our differences, we're in this life and this community together. I hope you all do too. Let's commit ourselves to being thoughtful in the way we speak to each other, to assume the best in each other, and engage each other, seeking to understand. So on behalf of my family, the village council, and our whole village team, I wish our community, my colleagues, the village team as well, and our whole community a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Mayor, I move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you all, and good night.